recording of the poster presentation titled Engaging Woodland Stewards in Forest Biodiversity Assessment in Kespukwitk. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Mi'kmaq Forest Stewards of Kespukwitk, to whom much gratitude is owed for sharing their home place with us. This poster is co-authored by Abby Lewis and Jane Barker from the Mersey Tobeatic Research Institute in Kempt, Nova Scotia. Biodiversity refers to the vast array of genes, species, even ecosystems that constitute life on Earth. And globally, we know that forests are facing major declines in biodiversity, partly related to habitat loss and fragmentation. The forests of Nova Scotia have faced consistent degradation of forest structural complexity, particularly since increased mechanization of the forest industry in the late 1900s, as discussed by Betts et al. In a recent paper on avian declines in the region. There are currently few mechanisms in place to ensure biodiversity and wildlife habitat is protected on private land, but by engaging with private woodland stewards, conducting surveys, and providing guidance around beneficial management practices to protect and enhance biodiversity features, we aim to support and protect biodiversity in these areas. Using the Nova Scotia Department of Natural Resources and Renewables Field Guide to Forest Biodiversity Stewardship, which is shown in the middle photo on this slide, MTRI staff have designed a field survey protocol and methodology to assess the habitat quality of woodland environments, including many of the features outlined in that stewardship guide. In addition to those features, researchers seek to identify special habitats for species at risk through this process. And often land stewards themselves are involved in the survey process, providing insights into past woodland management practices and their own wildlife observations. First, MTRI staff will carry out a desk-based assessment to identify known locations of species at risk, important habitat features, and threats to the forest ecosystem. Landscape scale ecosystem values are considered at this stage. Existing woodland management plans, should they be available, are incorporated into the assessment of forest condition, soil type, and distribution of wet areas across the woodland. Next, in order to capture wide-ranging habitat values across potentially large areas of woodland, MTRI staff assess forest biodiversity using two separate methodologies within the same forest stand: plot-based monitoring and purposeful wandering surveys. Typically, a survey of the entire stand is made before biodiversity features are measured within a 10-meter radius plot, placed in a location representative of the stand conditions overall. This method allows researchers to identify patches of high-value habitat across the woodland. In addition to the following features, indicators of soil health and function are also measured. The biodiversity features we seek to identify include coarse woody material, so that's any fallen trees or branches on the ground or nearly on the floor of the forest. Large diameter snags, and those are standing dead trees, which often provide roosting, nesting, and foraging habitat. Trees with active nesting cavities are of interest, like the hemlock in the bottom left photo. High-value mast-producing trees and shrubs, like the smooth beech in the middle bottom photo, or red oak as well is of interest. Legacy and super canopy trees provide the space for more forest structure to develop beneath. Including well-developed for vertical structure is very important in a forest stand. Riparian areas and wet features that are unidentified outside of riparian areas are important for us, as well as special habitat features like rock outcrops, dens, karst topography, and especially old growth patches. This work has engaged at least 21 land stewards and their families throughout the district of Kespukwitk, and we expect many more will be engaged over the next 5 years through our partnership with the Family Forest Network, which is a collaboration comprised of 11 woodland stewardship NGOs across Nova Scotia. As you can see, at least 13 species at risk and 8 occurrences of invasive species have been confirmed through this method of biodiversity assessment, which, although these assessments are primarily structural and features-based, species of interest, if seen or reported by the landowner, are certainly noted, and if resources allow, habitats which show potential to support species at risk are revisited and surveyed at the appropriate time of year by a species at risk specialist. Some of the species located through this process have included the Canada warbler, eastern wood pewee, and common nighthawk breeding territories. In many cases, these occurrences were identified through deployment of autonomous recording units, and their presence confirmed by Dr. Cindy Stacer and her research team. Likewise, threats to forest ecosystems, including invasive plants and insect species, such as hemlock woolly adelgid and the glossy-leaved buckthorn, both shown below in photos, have been identified through this work. We always aim to share beneficial management practices to woodlot owners and forest professionals. Following our surveys, an assessment document is prepared, which informs the woodland owner of special habitats and overall biodiversity values identified through the survey. Beneficial management practices and areas for intervention may be offered for the enhancement of woodland value to biodiversity. Below is just one example of an annotated map output, which was included in one assessment summary, identifying some of the higher value features located on the woodlot during our survey. Beneficial management practices that woodland stewards can implement include promoting structural and species diversity wherever possible, usually by applying uneven age management, leaving large down trees as valuable coarse woody material in the forest, buffering wet features by 20 meters or more, protecting the soils, avoiding rutting and compaction, and by avoiding disruptive management activities during the spring and summer months. We would like to thank the funders of this project, including the Nova Scotia Department of Natural Resources and Renewables. We're grateful to our forestry partners at the Western Woodlot Services Cooperative, to Dr. Cindy Stacer for her collaboration around land birds at risk, and the many land stewards who welcome researchers on the lands they care for. Feel free to follow up with any questions at the Mersey Tobeatic Research Institute.